First thing you're going to want to do is drain the coolant out of it. So we got to pull all the EGR cooler and some coolant lines off. And I cover up anything that I want to keep clean. This is a good spot to drop shit in. Turbo. This one I'll just throw a rag over in the clamp, just to keep dust from going in there. So you need to get the intake off. And the cast piece goes to the turbo. Pull your turbo outlet off. Get this little muffler for the air compressor inlet. Get that back out of the way. And we'll start pulling the harness off. I try and break things down as little as possible, so we're going to pull the coolant line to the EGR cooler. We'll pull that bolt, leave that one in, pull it right here, this clamp here, and get the EGR valve off out of the way. We'll pull the vent line off the EGR cooler so we have more room to get to that bolt there. With that bolt out, loosen both of these clamps off. And these are usually kind of stuck. If you just take a flat screwdriver and pry them a little bit, they'll pop right off like that. Sometimes they aren't stuck too bad. So we got those free. We'll leave those ones on. Pull these bolts out that hold that hose on. Unplug your EGR valve. These little connectors can be kind of tricky. They get real brittle. So if you can work it up and pull out on it, try and pull the connector that way at the same time. It opens itself up, so pulling out on it while you lift on that will help it come apart and get all that dirt and crap in there. Makes them hard to go. And you can pull this whole thing off. EGR valve. Less lines you take off, the less fittings or O-rings you have to replace. These sensors, connectors just rotate. Lefty loosey. That one's a little sticky. Same concept as the EGR valve plug. Kind of lift them up as you're twisting them because they want to come out. And unplug your turbo speed sensor. Cut those zip ties. Then we can unbolt this harness, get it out of the way. Unplug the turbo actuator. And that harness. Just get down out of the way for now and we'll go after the EGR cooler next. To get the EGR cooler out, we'll pull this sensor bank off. These babies here sometimes can be pretty tight. You got a 17 mil there and then a 14 for this, and these are exhaust gas pressure sensors, so they deal with a lot of heat. Sometimes they can be stuck in there a little bit, but we'll leave those two connections. Pull that one and that one, pull that block off. So this one on the back pressure valve's wanting to round off with a wrench, so I have this crow's foot line wrench adapter. They make sockets like this too that grab a hold of them a little better. It should be able to break it free. All right, I only had to work it back and forth a couple times. Started coming pretty easy once I had some panther piss on there. Pull those two bolts out. There's one here, one behind. If that's stuck, just give her a couple taps and it should come right out of there. We'll pull this coolant line, this plate that holds the wiring harness, and then there's 3 clamps that hold the EGR cooler. Get those off out of the way. So get all your bolts out of this, get it out of the way. All the rock up in there. These are T45 Torx. Used to be a 7/16 on the older models. You can just lift those up and they should come right out of the back. There And everything on this is pretty much 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, a couple bigger ones. You're going to be wanting to work with metric for the most part. Now we're going to pry this off up. Depending on your truck, this bracket that holds the fan shroud can make it kind of tight. So I've learned just kind of move it off to the side. Helps going back together more than anything. So if you pull the bolt and loosen the nut on the stud, it's slotted. Let's see if I can get a picture of it. You can see it's slotted on that one side, and if you can just get it knocked out of that slot, it'll hold itself there. It should give you just enough clearance to not bump into it. Go ahead and pull this line going to the top of the radiator from the thermostat. If your engine was cold, when you drain the coolant, this is going to have coolant in it, so just be prepared for that. So if you have a cold engine and there's no coolant stuck above this thermostat, you probably have a bad thermostat stuck open. So you might want to change that while you're here too. With that thermostat closed, there's no way for the coolant to get out of that line when you drain it out. So we're just going to try and catch what we can and mostly just make a mess. You don't have to pull that. I've just run into some issues before with cutting the seal right there. So I want to give myself plenty of room when I'm going back together. Because if you cut that seal, you're doing it all again. Very important step. Unplug the temperature sensor coming out of the EGR cooler. If you forget that, probably break off and you'll need one of those. And it's just right around underneath on the front of that where it turns over towards the driver's side. You should be able to pry that up and out of there. Don't want to get too carried away. But it should come loose on those connections there. It's still connected with a slip fitting right here. You just have to work it out of there, get it to come loose. If it bites you too much, you can pry that off a little bit and it should come right out of there. It's a good idea to look in here. Make sure you don't have any coolant buildup. Tell you if you had a bad EGR cooler. That one looks good. Did all that so we can do this. 4 bolts that bolt the manifold to the turbo. Those are 13 millimeter and they will be pretty tight. Turbo will just kind of sit there. Don't have to worry about it. It'll rest in place. It's pretty much just floating free at this point. We'll get these out and we can start doing all the manifold bolts, which are 15 millimeter. Once you get it apart, sometimes it's hard to tell if you have a manifold leak. You can see it now that it's all torn apart. All black down in there. I think the back one, that one you can see. I also pull this little coolant neck out for the EGR cooler. Makes it a lot easier to get the manifold out of there and put it back together. There's 3 13 millimeter bolts holding that on. Kind of a pain to get to. The turbo sitting down like that, that little 1/2 inch makes a big difference for that front one. Alright, just rest in there. Lay it out like this. Just be careful with that hose so you don't mess it up. Now, getting to this bolt back there. A lot of times there's a big brass fitting here that makes it pretty tight. You can get around it. I'll probably try and get around it first, but if not, you just pull that hose and that fitting off. Be prepared, you might need new O-ring for it. I did end up pulling this brass fitting out. Gives you a lot better gasket. Oh, you can really see that one blown right there. It'll let you torque that one how you need to. make things easier. So now we can pull the rest of the manifold bolts out. With all the manifold bolts out, manifold will be loose. Twist it up out of there and get it out of the way. Now these manifolds are pretty prone to warping. You should lay a straight edge across here, see if it's warped. Realize most guys aren't going to do that or have access to a straight edge, but you can usually see it with your eye. This one's fairly straight. You can see a little bit of warpage almost. Just as far as they're not all flat anymore. Never known anybody to machine one of these. This truck, not going to spend the money on a manifold. I'll just clean it up and go back on. Check in here for any cracks between this bridge. And get all your old gaskets out of the way. Really get a look at where things were blown out. Number 6, number 3, number 4. Looks like number 1 too. So I use a wheel like this, clean all that up, clean that flange up, clean the manifold up, just where the seals are gonna sit. You can use sandpaper, emery cloth, whatever you have access to. You just want a nice clean surface and a flat surface when you go back together. Whatever you use to clean this, you just don't want to take a bunch of metal off. These are plastic, so I'd have to go at it pretty hard to hurt that manifold. So if you see sparks, you might be using a little bit too much. You'll be able to see where the gasket seals. You're gonna have some rust and some pitting around there. Just make sure there's nothing major where it looks like the new gasket's not gonna seal. Again, look for cracks, anything like that. There's a crack between here sometimes. This one looks pretty good. And you got some flaking there, but it seals right in there, so should be fine. Clean up where your EGR valve bolts while you're here. Those are usually fine. I have seen heads that are pitted so bad they won't seal before. This one looks pretty good. Got some marks where the gasket sits. That's about it. Now if you feel like you need to plug these holes when you're cleaning that up, that's just fine. I've just done enough of them. Nothing that gets in there isn't going to come right back out. It's mostly soot, real small stuff. It'll go straight through the turbo. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, you're going to need 6 of these. 2 213 8143 and a 210 6210. That's to go on the turbo. Those are your manifold gaskets. You are supposed to replace these turbo bolts every time. I have yet to break one, so I still use them. I'll get some anti-seize on all of these. Make it easier to come out next time. easiest way I've figured to do this is to preload the gaskets onto the manifold. I just do the 2 top bolts. They have tabs in them that the bolt will thread into, and they shouldn't fall off. Once you get all your gaskets on here, got your turbo gasket. It will clip down over there and somewhat hold itself in place. And we'll set that manifold down in there and get a couple bolts started. Once all the top bolts are started, you can go ahead and get the bottom one started. And we'll snug them down. You want to start in the middle. Just kind of go in a circle and work your way out. That way it'll set everything flat. Let these slip a little bit if they need to. And we'll go over the torque. Torque on the manifold bolts is 60 Newton meters, which is about 45 foot-pounds. Same thing, start in the middle, work your way out. Don't be afraid to use an extension with your torque wrench. Just make sure you're straight. It's an old wives' tale that an extension changes the torque numbers. Now, I like to go through them all again. Once I'm done, just to make sure they're all good. Turbo bolts. Drop in, snug up. These torque to 40 Newton meters, which is about 30 foot-pounds, plus 60 degrees. So I've already torqued these. You're going to want to mark one flat is 60 degrees. Divide 360 by 6, it's 60. So we're going to want to go and turn this mark over to this mark, one flat, 60 degrees. There you go. What we're doing is stretching that bolt a little bit. That's why they say to replace them, but in this application, I still haven't seen the need to do that. If you want to buy new bolts, I'm sure you can. I haven't had an issue yet. I'm going to grab a new O-ring for this brass fitting I took out back there. Get that put in. And then we can probably put the EGR cooler back on. EGR cooler gets coolant through these connectors here. It's just a piece of metal with some rubber around it for a gasket. And they just slip in there. And you probably, if you were in a bind, could reuse these. One at the front, one at the rear. I always replace them because I have had them go bad before. They are a 186 32 66. Takes 2 of them. I'll pop the old ones out. Take some emery cloth and clean this up in here. And then get ready to go back on. Just want to get any of the gunk that's in there cleaned out. Not so much this surface, it's down in here where that connector actually goes, just so you don't pinch or cut that gasket. I cleaned this one that lets the exhaust gases through a little bit too. I like to put a little oil on these, help them slip in. Rub it around the outside of it. Whoops. And then Should be able to push that back in there. Also, we're gonna put a little oil on this connection here, where the exhaust gases pass through. And this part can be a little tricky because you have to get that slipped in same time as you slip it in right here. Now, I leave this rear connection off. That way you can come back and do that later because it sits at an angle. It's just too many places to line up all at once. So we'll start with getting those on and the EGR cooler up there. Next, we'll get a new gasket there, which is a 210-6218. And get this piece pushed up in there. I already have the connector in there. I'll just slide it in. I need to clean that up. Push it up in there, get the bolts in it. So in filming at the same time, I made a little mistake. I usually set that down in there before I put the cooler on, and now it will not fit. So all I'm going to do is just pull this connection apart here and slide it down in there. That line disconnected, you've got plenty of room to go in. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. Yep, slips in just like that. Put your gasket in there, bolt her up. Now for all these little O-rings, these are a 211-6602. Those ones, all three of those, that one up there. If these ones aren't too flattened out, you can see that one's still round, sticking out, looks good. That one's still sticking out plenty far. I just go ahead and reuse these. If you did have a leak here, it'd be easy enough to change. I have a whole pile of them. If I needed to, I'd change them, but that's up to you. 211-6602. Next, we can stick our exhaust sensors back on. And make sure you put little anti-seize on these, especially this one here. Try and keep it from seizing on for the next time, because you will be doing it again if you're gonna own a truck like this. Put those back on. We can go ahead and get that bracket up here that holds the wiring harness. Lay your harness up, bolt it down, get your sensors connected back in. As they twist down, they'll pull themselves together. You should go until you'll feel and hear a click on those. Now, depending on application, you might use some different bolts here. This uses certain ones. I've seen them to where this shares hold downs with the harness, vice versa. So that's going to vary a little bit depending on exactly what truck you got. Plug our actuator back in and our turbo speed sensor. Get some zip ties on all this stuff. Usually if there's a patch like that on them, it's a good spot for a zip tie. Another one will go there and there. Two gaskets for the EGR valve are a 203-5973 and a 191-7870. Go ahead and clean up your flanges a little bit and set that back up on there. It should snap in there pretty close. These gaskets, Paccar will tell you to replace these clamps, but sometimes every dollar counts. And if they tighten down, then they're still fine. Just want to make sure you point those some direction to where it's easy to get. Should be able to, one-handed maybe, snap those over like that. Plug your EGR valve back in. Put a zip tie around that guy. Should fit in these notches here. And we can put all of our smaller coolant lines on there, here, and here. Got that connector tied down. Got our harness for the EGR valve tied up where they suggest. Got these all tied up, out of the way. Got all of our little coolant fittings back in. Put this guy on over here. These take this special O-ring washer, use it ring. I've heard it called a lot of things. Part numbers are 189-8204. I'll take 2 of them, one on each side of the banjo. Go ahead and put our intake back on. Intake's held on by 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tighten those down, plug your humidity sensor in, and that usually reminds you to plug this EGR temperature sensor back in. This gasket right here, if it's good when you take it apart, leave it, because it is a pain to clean off and nobody can ever find it if you're asking a dealer. Part number for it is a 192 3003 if you have to have it. But that's boost pressure, so that's got to be a good gasket. So we'll get a new gasket there, get our charge pipe on, our intake. We should be able to put the coolant back in it. I got it full of coolant. Nothing started running out on the ground, so that's a good sign. So I am going to wash all the junk off of here, the mess I made when I took it all apart, and then we'll purge the cooling system, which the right way to do that, take that little cap off, the pressure cap over there, run it up to temp. Once it hits about 190, the thermostats will open and it'll drink a little bit of coolant, get all the air out of it, and we can top it off and it should be good to go.